Welcome back. We've all heard of recycling paper, cans, and tires, but what about an airport parking lot?
This is what we call an apron in the aviation world. Sometimes it's called a ramp. You might also hear it referred to as tarmac. But basically this area is used specifically for parking aircraft. They do taxi around in here, or they move around in here to get to and from parking spots, but the apron is primarily just a big parking lot. When the city bought this property and built the airport in 1959, 1960, they laid that concrete apron down. And over the years, it had been patched, it had been fixed, and probably for the last 10 years, not much had happened to it. So it was 50 years old and not in very good condition. It was breaking up. The joints between the concrete, which normally are very close together, were starting to separate. The edges were starting to fall apart, and we were creating problems with the concrete being rough for the airplanes to taxi across. Plus it was also creating chips, what we call FOD, or foreign object debris, which can be damaging to an aircraft engine or an aircraft propeller. We needed to rehabilitate or refurbish that concrete in order to make it acceptable to continue to park aircraft on. We could have broken that concrete up into large chunks, hauled it off to a landfill, and wasted all of the fuel for the trucks, wasted all the landfill space. Instead, we chose to do a much more sustainable project. We brought in a machine, we broke the concrete up into small bits and pushed it down into the ground and then laid the asphalt over the top of it. The area is about 2.5 acres, runs from these hangars and facilities on the north end. Of course, there's kind of a drop-off before we get to our next apron on the south end. As you can see, the aircraft are parked here, not just the small airplanes, but we do occasionally bring in larger airplanes. If we were to have a VIP visit, for example, when Vice President Gore came several years ago, they brought his aircraft in and parked it in this area. Besides aircraft parking, this area can be used for a variety of other uses. For those of you who have been out for the Experimental Aircraft Association's fly-in that has been here at the airport the last couple of years, you'll probably recognize this area as where we held that fly-in. There were booths and people all over this area who were investigating the airplanes. In an emergency, for example, several years ago when the hurricanes were coming through South Florida, we had a lot of aircraft that relocated from South Florida up here, and all of our parking areas were chock full of aircraft trying to escape the storm. But if we ever had an emergency here in Tallahassee where we needed to stage materials, where we needed to bring in support units, this area or other areas that we have like it on the airport would be prime usage points for that. We could stage trucks, we could stage people, we could stage equipment and supplies that then would get dispersed out through the rest of the city. Because it's used for aircraft parking, this apron is different from a road. The asphalt is thicker than what you find in most roads. It's also made up of slightly different materials. We have to meet an FAA or Federal Aviation Administration specification for the materials that we use. It also has these tie-down points, which you can see have got, their anchor points. They go down about 2 feet into the ground and with concrete and a real strong anchor point, and they're used with ropes or chains to tie the aircraft down to keep them from moving around in the wind. The rehabilitation of this apron won an award from the Florida Airports Council. It won their Environmental Excellence Award for 2010, and the reason for that was because of that sustainable practice of breaking up the concrete and keeping it in place. This is really the first time that's been awarded to a project like this where it was actually awarded for a sustainable or a green project, and we're very happy that they awarded it to us. While we were very happy to get this award, that doesn't mean that we are done doing these kinds of projects. As the airport continues to build and construct and move forward to meet the needs of this community over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we're trying to do many more of these types of projects where we build the sustainable efforts, the green efforts into our project and get not only a nice facility that we can all use in the future, but we get that benefit back to the community of doing it in a way that protects our environment.